I was a Disney kid, obviously. Heck, I even still have toys and figurines of the mouse himself lying around my room, specifically a large, stuffed plushie of Mickey. However, as I grew older, the nostalgia that had soured into curiosity led me to question what the workers did behind the scenes. The magic on stage is meticulously crafted, but we never truly knew how they operated or what occurred when the park went dark and the guests were cleared out. For years, rumors drifted through the fringes of the internet about Disney's aggressive acquisition tactics, shady, behind-closed-doors business deals with shell companies to secure massive land purchases or unannounced, aborted expansion projects. When those corporate rumors finally died down, a much darker rumor surfaced: whispered accounts of Disney silently abandoning two entirely functional theme parks around the world, leaving them to rot in the dark. For decades, company spokespeople were occasionally cornered and interviewed about these legendary ghost parks, but they always maintained a stone-faced front. They insisted the corporate rumors were nothing but fabrications, internet folklore, designed specifically to drive viral traffic. Yet the community didn't buy the corporate defense. People kept digging, uncovering redacted tax records, hidden land deeds, and unpublicized environmental finds. One deep forum archivist even claimed to have digitized a corrupted internal VHS training tape from the late 1960s. On it, a visibly exhausted executive specified that the company needed to execute highly aggressive, off-the-books land agreements just to guarantee the massive land grabs required for their Florida properties. Soon after those specific rumors broke online, both targeted parks were abruptly closed to the public, scrubbed from the official maps. The company cited rampant, sudden complaints from guests regarding severe rodent infestations in the main castles and resort suites, coupled with a mysterious, rapid degradation of park hygiene. But those who watched the business listings knew the truth. It was the fallout of secret, catastrophic backhand deals collapsing behind the scenes. A few years back, I joined a highly restrictive, invite-only blog forum dedicated strictly to this hidden side of Disney archaeology. I spent weeks scrolling through thousands of text walls detailing canceled attraction blueprints, dry rot reports, and vintage cast member manuals. That was where I found the thread. It was entirely unlabeled, just a string of random numbers for a title. The original poster had uploaded an eerie, low-resolution photograph. The image depicted a concrete tunnel, damp and green, with subterranean moisture. Slumped heavily against the wall was a Mickey Mouse costume. Beneath the photo was a hyperlink to a private, password-protected server. I couldn't understand why a highly regulated, expensive piece of character wardrobe would be discarded in a maintenance vault. A few days later, the same user updated the thread with a second photo. The environment hadn't changed, but the costume's head was now tilted down at a sharp, unnatural angle, staring directly into the camera lens. Disturbed but utterly fascinated, I forwarded the links to my friend, James. James was the operator of a small urban exploration YouTube channel called James Hunt, a guy who constantly balanced on the edge of legal trespassing just to chase a viral hit. After spending 48 hours analyzing the forum's image metadata and cross-referencing the visible ceiling pipe configurations with old construction schematics, James managed to pinpoint the exact GPS coordinates, an auxiliary, long-abandoned storage depot built deep beneath a forgotten corner of the property. He begged me to go with him. I was hesitant, terrified of the legal ramifications, the heavy security patrols Disney is famous for, or running into dangerous vagrants in the pitch black. James just laughed, tapping his camera gear, and assured me that the location was so thoroughly abandoned that even security had forgotten it existed. I finally gave in. Little did I know it would be the worst decision of my life. We arrived at the perimeter under the cover of a humid, moonless midnight. Cutting through the outer tree line, the atmosphere shifted instantly. The structural remnants of the park loomed like skeletal monuments. As soon as we stepped past the threshold of the decayed, overgrown attraction exterior, a profound, localized cold dread settled over me. Out in the shadows, near a cluster of dead turnstiles, I swear I saw an outline staring back at us. It was shaped perfectly like the silhouette of the mouse, but it was entirely swallowed by the dark, lacking any depth or texture. I blinked hard, shaking my flashlight beam over the spot, and forced myself to dismiss it as an optical illusion, born of nerves. James didn't notice my panic. He was scanning the cracked asphalt floor with his headlamp until the beam caught a dusty, yellowed piece of paper trapped under a rusted iron bracket. He pried it loose, held it up to the camera lens, and read it aloud. It was a company memo printed on heavy, vintage corporate letterhead, but the tone was entirely wrong for a hospitality giant. It read, "Property status, secured/decommissioned. Operations have been permanently relocated to the primary resort zones. Do not attempt re-entry to this site for salvage or inspection. It is not your business to be here." James grinned, declaring triumphantly that he had told me there was a cover-up here. My stomach dropped. Disney executives and PR teams would never use language that aggressive, that defensive, unless something absolutely catastrophic had happened. Every instinct I had told me to run. I told James we needed to turn back immediately. He just laughed, patted my shoulder, and said it would all be worth it once the ad revenue from the videos started rolling in. I sighed and numbly followed him into a dilapidated, collapsed merchandise building adjacent to the castle. Then the barely working speakers said it. "Thanks for visiting. See you real soon." The air inside smelled like moldering plush toys and wet drywall. As we navigated the wreckage, a heavy wooden display shelf suddenly collapsed under its own weight, smashing onto the floor. Behind where it had stood was a dark, jagged breach in the wall, hastily concealed with a piece of rotting plywood. James didn't hesitate. He yanked the board away, kicked the debris aside, and crawled right through the gap. Suddenly, I was alone in the dark merchandise shop. A violent, unnatural shiver shot straight down my spine. The temperature in the room had plummeted in a matter of seconds. Terrified of being left behind in the dark, I dropped to my knees and scrambled through the hole after him. When I stood up on the other side, my breath hitched. The damp concrete walls, the low piping, the heavy shadows. We were standing inside the actual 1971 Utilidors, the exact, low-quality concrete labyrinth from the Forum picture. We began walking down the concrete corridor when the air grew deathly still. Then we heard them, heavy, deliberate footsteps, echoing from the darkness behind us. We spun around, beams of light cutting through the dust, but the tunnel was completely empty. That was when I saw it again, the shadowy outline of the mouse, standing just at the edge of the light. It slowly raised a gloved hand, waving to me before pointing a finger deeper into the labyrinth. James didn't see it. He was already sprinting blindly ahead into the dark, desperate to catch whatever was making the noise on camera. I had no choice but to run after him. The tunnel finally terminated at a dead end that split into 3 pitch-black pathways. James, completely consumed by adrenaline, pointed to the right and told me we'd cover more ground. We split up. He told me to check the left while he took the right. Before I could even protest, his flashlight beam vanished down the right corridor. Left entirely alone, I stepped down the left path. The air grew thicker with every step, carrying an overpowering, sickening stench of advanced rot and old copper. At the very end of the corridor, a slumped silhouette was sitting against the damp wall. My hand trembled as I raised my flashlight. The beam illuminated the matted, decaying fabric of the Mickey Mouse costume from the forum photos, but seeing it up close was a nightmare. This shared the exact current production design guests see walking through the parks today, with its familiar, bright red shorts and pale peach skin tones perfectly intact, except here. It was rotting, its pristine smile was warped, and its mouth was a jagged, hollow void of nothingness. I took a hesitant step closer, forcing the flashlight beam up to its face. My breath caught in my throat, shoved crudely into the empty, black eye sockets were a pair of rotting, bloodshot human eyes. They didn't fit the modern mask. They sat loosely in the rubber holes, permanently leaking streams of thick, dark blood that stained the plush cheeks. I froze in absolute terror. Suddenly, James' voice shattered the silence, screaming from the adjacent tunnel. There were mice, so many mice. The spell broke. I tore my eyes away from the bleeding mascot and sprinted frantically toward his screams. We scrambled together, climbing onto rusted electrical machinery as a carpet of scurrying, black bodies swarmed the floors, retreating into the drainage vents, only after we violently kicked at the metal grates. His voice shaking, James asked if I had seen anything. He was frantically brushing off his jeans as he said it. I was trembling so hard I could barely breathe. The horror of what I had just seen paralyzed my throat, but the desperate need to get out of there forced the words out anyway. I told him everything: the matted fur, the hollow mouth, the shriveled, bleeding human eyes shoved into the sockets of that modern, standard-colored suit. James looked at me with pure disgust, pale with fear, but then a sickening spark of curiosity lit up his eyes. He didn't want to run. He wanted to go back. He wanted it on camera. He muttered that we had to record it, that nobody would ever believe us without proof, and that they'd probably think we were lying just for clout. He grabbed my arm as he said it. I fought against his grip, begging him to leave, but adrenaline-fueled desperation made him stronger. He pulled me forcefully back down the path. As we were dragged backward, I noticed something we had missed in our initial panic. The middle pathway, the one we hadn't explored, wasn't just a dead end. It opened up into a rusted iron spiral staircase, leading directly up into the belly of the castle from underground. Before I could focus on it, James hauled me right back into the dead-end chamber. He didn't hesitate. He held up his phone, snapped a flash photo, and hit record, bathing the grotesque mascot suit in harsh digital light. He breathed that he'd got it and told me we were leaving. Now, we turned to sprint back toward the exit, but we were too late. Behind us, a wet, sickening crunch echoed through the concrete chamber. We froze and slowly looked back. The matted Mickey costume was slowly rising from the ground. It stood up, its joints popping unnaturally, but its limbs hung like loose, empty cloth. Suddenly, its jaw unhinged. A torrent of scratching, black mice poured out of its hollow mouth, screaming into the dark as they fled into the walls. Then the creature raised its yellow-gloved hands to its face. The fabric fingers dug violently into the hollow eye sockets. With a wet, tearing sound, it ripped the shriveled, rotting human eyes completely out of its head and dropped them onto the floor. For a second, the sockets were just empty, pitch-black voids. But then, deep within the darkness of the head, two pinpricks of brilliant, cold white light ignited. distorted. The white, glowing pupils stared straight into our souls from the modern cartoon mask. With a horrific snap, the mascot suit violently broke its own neck. Its head flopped uselessly to its side while those twin white lights stayed locked on us. Then it opened its jagged, hollow mouth. A sound tore out of the speaker mesh inside the head. A laugh, but it wasn't the cheerful, high-pitched chuckle from the cartoons. It was a deeply distorted, glitching nightmare of a sound, warped and pitched down violently, sounding like a skipping, water-damaged audio tape layered with a low, metallic growl. Ha ha, ha ha. The static, heavy laugh echoed off the damp concrete walls, vibrating right through my teeth. At first, the costume didn't lunge. It just stood there, swaying slightly on limp, fabric legs. Then it began to walk toward us. Its movements were slow, agonizingly deliberate, and missing frames, like a real-world rubber hose animation twitching through the dark. The broken head swinging loosely against its shoulder with every heavy step. That slow, rhythmic stalk was worse than a sprint. It felt like it knew we couldn't escape. But as we stumbled backward, my flashlight beam cut across the floor, catching the discarded remains it had ripped from its face. That was when the pacing shattered. The empty yellow gloves whipped forward, and the entity exploded into a frantic, unnatural sprint, tearing down the hall toward us as that broken, demonic laughter chased us through the corridor. James screamed as a fabric hand clamped down on his jacket. I slammed my flashlight into the creature's arm, breaking its grip. We broke free and sprinted blindly toward the breach in the wall. The hollow-eyed thing tore after us, its broken head swinging wildly against its shoulders as it sprinted on fabric legs. We scrambled through the hole, back into the abandoned merchandise shop. Together, we grabbed the heavy wooden display shelf and slammed it back over the opening, jamming a steel pipe through the handles of the door frame. The plywood behind the shelf began to violently splinter as the entity slammed against it from the other side, shrieking a distorted, mechanical roar. But the barricade held. Then the violent slamming abruptly stopped. The heavy concrete corridor fell dead silent. Suddenly, a sound pressed against the wood from the other side. The creature's unhinged jaw was right against the crack in the door. The distorted, glitching nightmare of a voice returned, layering that high-pitched cartoon chuckle over a deep metallic static. Haha, thanks for visiting. I'll see you real soon. Haha. The voice didn't sound frantic anymore. It sounded cold, patient, deliberate. It echoed right through the wood and vibrated against my skull. We didn't wait to hear another word. We left it trapped in the dark. We ran out of the park and never looked back. James deleted the footage. His channel went dark a week later. We don't talk anymore. It was only later, after obsessively digging through old, heavily redacted corporate logs and deep web forums, that I began to stitch together fragments of what happened 15 years ago. There were no official police reports, just leaked, frantic chat transcripts from low-level employees on the night the park abruptly shut down. They talked about a maintenance worker who had gone down into the Utilidors for a routine cleanup and simply never came back up. The messages were fragmented, filled with panic and arguments. Some mentioned heavy padlocks being found chained on the tunnel doors from the outside, a cruel workplace joke, gone completely wrong over a long holiday weekend. Others whispered about what they found when they finally opened the vault. An active, current-issue mascot suit stuffed into a corner, its fabric wet and ruined. The most deeply buried leak claimed that the employees, terrified of criminal charges and corporate ruin, desperately tried to hide the evidence. Right there in the dark, they grabbed a brand new suit straight from the character wardrobe to mask the crime. forcing something unrecognizable into it. Because the rubber eye sockets were completely hollow, they frantically forced a pair of loose, unblinking human eyes into the gaps to mask the void before abandoning the sight forever. Every time I pass a mirror now or look into a dark corner, I still see a shadow of the mouse waving at me. I think whatever was left in those tunnels isn't just a ghost anymore. It's an entity that was born from corporate malice and terrible fate, and deep down, I already know that thing has escaped. Sometimes, late at night, I see something staring back at me through the window. Now, I know I'm not safe. I'm warning you. If you ever hear something say, "See you real soon," and no one's around, don't look for where it came from, or it will find you